Chicago summers, they tend to be some of the most violent and bring on some of the most violence. And some of the city's most vulnerable residents, the youth, are caught right in the middle.
Yeah, helping to break the cycle of generational violence is Executive Director of the Friends of the Children Chicago, Taal Hasak Lowy. Taal, good morning.
Good morning.
All right, so why don't you tell us about Friends of the Children Chicago?
Sure. Friends of the Children Chicago is a prevention and early intervention program. We intentionally serve the children facing the highest risk factors and with the least protective factors in their life. We start working with them in kindergarten, and they stay in our program till the end of high school no matter what. There's nothing they can do to be kicked out of the program. And we pair each child with our full-time salaried trained staff. And each friend, our professional mentors are called friends, only work with 8 children and spend 4 hours a week individually with each child at home, in school, and in the community.
That's great.
Spending that time. I mean, we got the latest numbers. We know Chicago is known for its gun violence. So far this year, 880 people have been shot. That number is counting. It grew by 5 just overnight. So when we're seeing this, I think we hear these numbers, we know that it's bad, but we're not really understanding what the issue is. Tell us what you're seeing in the community.
Sure, I think it's really important when we think about violence and not just to point our fingers and say, you people, you're so violent, why do you act this way? And to understand that the vast majority of those people have been exposed to significant trauma in their life, whether it's substance abuse, domestic violence, gun violence, incarcerated people in their life. And all the science and research shows us that if you're exposed to significant trauma as a youth and you don't get appropriate support, you can have a host of negative outcomes, which includes quick reaction, that you anger too quickly, which can lead to shooting and violence. And that's why we want to get a focus on getting early intervention for people that are exposed to significant trauma.
Yeah,
that's great.
Before we talk about the panel discussion that's coming up, because I think that'll be great, I want to dive just a little bit deeper because I'm from the South Side, and I feel like people on the North Side, people downtown, not necessarily that they don't care, but they don't fully understand what's happening, and it doesn't it doesn't affect them directly. So how can we get these people to understand what's happening and to care?
I think that's a fantastic question, and I really try to get people, and the reason why we're having this panel discussion that we'll talk about is for people to understand that biologically, all of our bodies respond the same way to trauma. Anyone who's exposed to significant trauma and doesn't have the buffering support of a positive, consistent relationship is going to react in the same way. Your brain gets stuck in fight or flight mode, and you're quick to respond, quick to anger, quick to respond to people and to overreact. And anyone respond the same way. And if you have, when you're living in a community or in a family where there's intergenerational trauma, that's what's happening. And if the mom or dad or grandma or whoever the adult is exposed to significant trauma and is quick to react, and that child is exposed to significant trauma, the cycle continues and continues.
I hear you saying this is a human reaction.
Exactly.
Right, so on June 5th, you have a panel called The Power of Early Intervention, Breaking the Cycle of Intergenerational Trauma. So what are people going to learn at this panel, and who can attend?
Sure. So it's open to the public. We hope everyone will come.
Yeah.
And we'll be looking at it from a few different ways. So we have Dr. Colleen Cacchetti from Lurie Center for Childhood Resilience, who's going to talk about what trauma does to the body and the brain, which is, again, the biological, anyone exposed to trauma. Dr. Maurice Swinney from Chicago Public Schools, he's the Chief Equity Officer.
Yes.
We'll talk about how it's an equity issue addressing trauma. And we also have Eddie Bocanegra, who runs the Ready Chicago program that's run through Heartland Alliance. We'll talk about if you don't address trauma in youth, you can't be surprised when people get engaged in violence as well. And we'll introduce people to Friends of the Children Chicago as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
so
very
much.
much. A pleasure.
Great work.
Important conversation. The Power of Early Intervention. It takes place Wednesday, June 5th at the Loyola University Water Tower campus. For more information, just head to friendschicago.org.